Good morning, everyone. It is Wednesday, November the 23rd. I don't know why I don't ever look the date up before I get started. It's not like I'm not going to use the date. So yeah, it's November the 23rd. It is the day before Thanksgiving here in the United States. I know I had said last week I was going to do recipes and stuff. I don't think I'm going to do that today. I think with it being the day before Thanksgiving, I think I'd rather talk about that. Yeah, I think that's what I want to do. Okay, so day before Thanksgiving. So I want to share my church experience from last Sunday. So I know I've talked about my faith on here several times, and I've talked about the fact that I'm not Christian, I'm pagan. But I'm the church pianist for a small Methodist church. And I'm okay with that. The pastor knows about me, but the congregation doesn't. And at this point, I don't feel the congregation necessarily needs to. I am being paid to play piano there, so this is a job. And like all jobs, I feel that in order to do a good job, my religion is not necessarily required, but my spirituality is. And the thing is, I feel like music can, I know you guys know what I'm trying to say here. This isn't anything new. Music supersedes all religions. Music speaks all languages and all faiths. Being able to give these people an opportunity to share in a spiritual experience is hugely gratifying for me, paycheck or not. And it doesn't matter to me that I am playing songs of their faith. It matters to me that I am playing songs of faith, not a specific faith. And I have some control over the music I play for prelude and postlude. I have pretty good control over the songs I get to play for prelude and postlude within the parameters of the Christian faith. And that's fine, because there are a lot of songs out there that are neutral enough and spiritually neutral enough as far as languaging goes that I'm comfortable with them. And some of them I play just on the principle of I remember how they made me feel. And we're going to have cat bath session, apparently. We've had all morning to have cat bath. So, no cat bath. Down, come on, down, down. No, roly-poly down. Thank you. So, anyway, so I play for this church. Which means that I sit through church sessions. I sit through sermons and things, which is kind of cool. Some weeks it's a little difficult, but most weeks it's pretty cool. This last week was an interesting Sunday. I don't know that I'd call it all sermon. The typical format is we do some introductory things. The pastor sits down with the kids in the front of the church and does a moment with the kids. And then the kids go back to their seats. Then we go into the sermon, and it's a pretty basic routine. So this past Sunday, a few things happened that really touched me. So pastor sat down with the kids during the kids' moment, and she was talking to them, understandably, about Thanksgiving, because it was the Sunday before Thanksgiving. And she was talking to them about the Pilgrims, and the way that she told her story of the Pilgrims is that when they got here, it was November, and it was cold, and they didn't have enough to eat. And they found that their food supplies were so low that all they had amongst themselves was 5 kernels of corn apiece. And so she handed out to the kids, and I left it downstairs. I wish I would have brought it up. These tiny little packets of tulle of netting with 5 kernels of corn in it, dried corn. And they're literally only that big. And she handed that out to the kids first and said, "Can you imagine this being all that you have to eat?" And then she had the kids hand this out to every member of the congregation. And whether that story is historically true or not, because I know that many of us feel that we've not been told the whole truth for so long that nobody knows what the truth is anymore as far as the first Thanksgiving and the slaughter and destruction of, America before the Europeans, it definitely was a poignant point. You can't deny the fact that these people came over from another country to a foreign land, a very wild foreign land, in order to try and create a new safe haven for themselves, most of them, a new safe haven for themselves, and they arrived here at the most possible dire of straits that no human being could imagine. And to know that among yourselves, you don't even have enough to provide for one of yourselves, let alone all of you. And to have that understanding of lack, to have that understanding of loss and destitution, I think is a very important thing to have at this time of the year. We do get awfully wrapped up in the gluttony and the greed of this season. We get wrapped up in how much food can we cook? And I'm guilty of this too. How much food can we cook? How much food can we consume? How quickly can we get to the sales where we can get the most discount possible and get all of the most items that we can for our gifts? And we get caught up in the mostness of the season. We forget about the less of the season. We forget about what brought us to this place, what brought us to where we are now, to where we can enjoy our luxuries, even those of us who aren't of middle or upper class. We still have quite a few luxuries. Excuse me. So that was actually a very poignant thing and a very touching thing to deal with on Sunday. But then after she talked about that, I found myself crying over the next part, and it's the cleaning hour. One of these days I'm going to get smart and just stop doing videos in my room. So then what she did next was she had the kids take an envelope, and she explained what was in the envelope. In the envelope, in every envelope, was a little return card. It had the church's address and a stamp on it, and crisp bills. I believe they were from $5 to $50 money in each envelope. And this is their annual Pay It Forward program. So the point is, these envelopes get handed out to every member of the congregation, and they get to take them home and open them up. And they have a choice of using what's in there or doubling what's in there, or adding to. It doesn't have to double, but adding to what's in the envelope. And then there's only 2 rules about that. You cannot keep the money for yourself, and you cannot give the money back to the church. The money has to go out into the community somewhere. You can give it to people, you can give it to organizations, you can do what you need to do with it, but it has to go out into the community somehow. And so she passed these out, and being in the congregation at the time, that meant that I got one and she gave me an extra one to bring home for Dan. And as she was explaining this, I started to cry. And, Pastor came up to me during offering, when everybody else was distracted with offering. She comes up to me and she goes, "Are you okay?" I said, "I'm fine. I'll explain it after services." So services are over and she comes back. She goes, "Are you okay? What's going on?" I said, "You did this program last year, and a member of your congregation doubled what was in the envelope and handed my husband and I $100. And they handed us $100 at a time when we were in a really rough spot. Emotionally, I was very raw. I had just turned 40. My dad had just about died. He'd spent 8 days in the hospital, 4 of those in the ICU. They still didn't know. They still don't know exactly what had happened. Our finances were tapped. We were just strapped. Thanksgiving was coming. I didn't know how I was going to handle food for Thanksgiving. Christmas was looming. I didn't know how I was going to handle presents for Christmas. We couldn't figure out what we were going to do about internet, about mortgage, about everything. Everything was so tight. Everything was so thinly strung and so fine and painful. And here, these people whom we've been making acquaintanceship with and developing a friendship with, I teach their children, handed us $100. no strings attached, handed us $100 and said, "This is part of a pay it forward program. We know how much you do for other people. Even when you don't have, we know how much you do for other people. And we see that you're hurting right now. Take this and use it however you need to." And it blew me away. I cried. I cried so hard. And I came home and I shut down and I cried. And then, so here we are Sunday, and I'm being handed an envelope of my own. And all I can think is last year at this time, we were handed this very envelope. We were on the receiving end of this envelope instead of the giving end. So I brought our envelopes home and we looked at them. And I got $10 in mine and Dan got $25 in his. And we're trying to decide what we want to do. First of all, if we want to pool our envelopes and then add to them, or if we want to do something separately. And we haven't decided yet where we want to spend that money. If we want to find a person or an organization. I myself, I'm leaning towards maybe a giving tree, or I'm leaning toward taking my money and sitting at McDonald's and buying the scruffiest people I can find a hot coffee. Because the scruffiest people are spending a lot of time outside, whether they're outside because they're homeless or they're outside because they have an outside job. They're the coldest people. So I thought maybe I would spend mine at like a McDonald's or someplace. So I just wanted to kind of share that with you. I'm not going to preach at you about all the thankfulness of the season, although it is a good time for that. You know, be aware that no matter how little you feel like you have, somebody has less. I mean, even if you're able to watch this video, you're doing better than a lot of people. So tomorrow we're going to go up north and we're going to spend Thanksgiving with Dan's dad and his partner. She didn't want to do all the cooking, but she doesn't mind cleaning, and I despise cleaning. I know you probably can't tell. Man, I hate to housekeep. But I love cooking, so I told her, you know, you clean the house, and we'll bring the food, and I'll cook. So I'm okay with that. So we're going to spend the day tomorrow with his family, and then Friday we're going to get our house ready for Christmas. I'm going to wrap some things up as far as getting ready for Saturday's tea party. I've started bell ringing this week. I started on Monday. I've done 4.5 hours of bell ringing, actually. I stayed on an extra half hour yesterday. I'm going to try and do that a few days so that I can make my 200. Sorry. So, okay, so let's do my accounting. Last week I had 171 hours. I've put in 4.5, 5.5. I've done 6.5 hours in the last week. This is my big season for volunteer work. So that puts me at 177.5 hours. I'm going to try to not do too many of these halves. This week's charity, on the idea of we have so much more, I picked Porchlight. And Porchlight is a Madison, Wisconsin organization. Dan and I actually used to do some volunteer work for Porchlight, serving breakfasts in their Grace Episcopal shelter. I don't know what they actually call the shelter, but it's in the basement of the Grace Episcopal Church. It's a men's shelter, a homeless shelter. I don't know how other states do it, but in Wisconsin, they actually document you when you stay the night in a shelter, and you're only allowed X amount of days in a shelter, so you have to be kind of careful and space those out appropriately so that you're not left out on the street on a night when it's too cold. Although most of the shelters, I believe in Madison, if it hits a certain temperature outside, they don't care how long you've been, how many days you've been in shelters, they will open doors because they don't want dead people on the streets. Which is sad that that's what it's come to, that it literally is just we don't want dead people on the streets. I mean, that's not quite what it is, but yeah. The homeless system needs a total overhaul. I've believed this for a long time. You can't blame the organizations that are out there doing what they can because their hands get tied too. But anyway, so Porchlight runs an organization that helps with homelessness in several different ways. So they provide overnight shelter. They help with housing. And then they also have supportive services in place for, like, I believe they have for helping people find jobs. They have people, I'm kind of reading their mission statement. They provide emergency shelter, food, employment services, counseling, and affordable transitional and permanent housing to homeless people in the Dane County area. So they do quite a bit. It seems like a pretty clean organization. I never had any reason to raise an eyebrow while I was working with them. I've met the owner once or twice. He seems like a nice guy, like the guy who runs the organization. So I will drop them down in the comments like I do, or in the description like I do all the time, but you can find them at porchlightinc.org, porchlightinc.org. And I want you guys to, if you're in America here, happy Thanksgiving. I hope you have a wonderful day with your families. I hope the stress is fairly minimal. The drama is fairly minimal. For those of you who are not in the United States who might be watching this, I hope you have a wonderful Thursday, because why not? And just take a moment maybe tomorrow, even if you're not in the U.S., take a moment to stop. Be grateful for the things you have. Send a prayer or send energy out for those who have very much less than what you do. So yeah, have a great weekend, and I will see you guys next Wednesday.